Hi, I'm Karlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Karlin Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, karlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It feels like we were just here. Because we were, in fact, just here not too long ago. We finished the last and final stream of Red May. We, as a community, have watched more socialist content this month than I think is healthy, more than I think is normal. And it has certainly informed the way we've seen the world, hasn't it? If you missed out on the late fascism stream earlier today, or any of the socialist content throughout the month of May, it is, of course, all archived on the channel and you can watch it anytime. But I highly recommend, if you attend none of my other streams, except, of course, the cult, the daily stream, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m., you always want to make sure to join us for Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is a stream we do at 6 p.m. on Saturdays on the channel, where we watch real-life dystopia, the farthest left of the far left, the most crazy nonsense you will see on the internet all week long, I promise you. And when you watch the real socialists, the advanced AP level content, it gives you a whole new understanding of what is going on with the woke left in this country. And that is one of the things that we are going to touch upon today, guys. Welcome to the cult. Please make sure you mount that like button for me. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you are not already. Let me show you what we're going to dig into today. What I want to spend, well, the majority of my time on is talking about the term queer. Now, if you watch our queer Marxism marathon this past weekend for Socialism Saturday, so this part is going to be a little bit of a review for you. But I do think it's important to have the review. I often think, especially with the more complex topics that we talk about, the review is necessary to really internalize and really understand what these things mean. And I got to tell you, Socialism Saturday this weekend, although it was quite literally, we watched 5 hours worth of queer Marxism, because I'm that insane. We were going to watch 7 hours worth of queer Marxism. I cut it down to 5. But those 5 hours were enlightening, weren't they? And those 5 hours gave us information and clips where we can hear from the mouths of the real trans activists, the transgender Marxists, the people who are pushing this ideology into our world at every single level. We can hear from the horse's mouth what these words actually mean. And that's critical to understand because we know that the woke left changes the definitions of words all the time. They change the definition to make it something it's not. They speak in code so you can't understand them. And they do it to confuse the general population, which then sucks them in to this ideology. And they just think they just think that I just want the world to be fair for gay people. I just want the world to be fair for trans people. Okay, well, no one actually disagrees with that, except that's not what you're actually doing. And people don't know, the useful idiots, the useful innocents, whatever you want to call them. I even don't think that some of the true believers understand this distinction is the woke left has changed the definition of the word queer. So we all know queer used to be a slur back in the day. If you called someone queer, it was not a good thing. You were calling them, usually was used on men. You're calling them gay, effeminate. It was used as a gay slur essentially. And so for a long time, queer was thought of as a gay slur. And then the woke left decided to reclaim the term queer. But when they reclaimed the term, they also changed the definition of it. But they didn't tell anyone this is not a definition you're going to get in the dictionary. This is not a definition that I think many people on the woke left can even articulate. Queer has nothing to do with being gay. Queer has nothing to do with who you sleep with. Queer has nothing to do with being trans. If you're trans or non-binary or any other gender identity, like your fey gender or bog gender or whatever the F gender, queer has nothing to do with any of that. When the real trans activists are talking to each other, when they don't think any of us are listening, they use the term queer to describe an act of political rebellion against the system. The system, in our case, being capitalism. All right. And so we're going to talk about that today. And I'm going to play you some of the clips from Socialism Saturday so that we can all really wrap our heads around the idea of what queer really means. Now, this is currently an article on my Substack, which is Karlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. I will put the article in the chat there if you guys want to follow along. And guys, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack. You can subscribe for free and get access to some of the work I do. Some of the stuff is behind a premium paywall. If you want full access, you can support the work I'm doing at $5 a month, $50 a year. I really do appreciate it. But the very best thing you guys can do is share. Please share this information. I view it as one of my primary jobs to teach you and download everything I know about the woke left ideology to you, showing you receipts so you can always see for yourself. I don't view it as my job to tell you what to think. I view it as my job to tell you what is going on so you can decide for yourself what to do with that information. But please share this out, because I think a lot of people have wrapped their head around the idea that the term white supremacy, whiteness, racism, it doesn't actually have anything to do with race, right? It has to do with capitalism. Every single time the woke left says white supremacy, white supremacist, all these things, they're talking about capitalism. They're not talking about skin color. That's why someone like a Byron Donalds or a Larry Elder or Tim Scott, these very, very, very black men, that's why they can be considered white supremacists or the face of multiracial white supremacy, as I think the LA Times has said it, the Washington Post has said it, NPR has had headlines like that. That's why really black men can be considered white supremacists, not because it has anything to do with skin color, but because they're engaging in capitalism. Okay? So we know that. But what I think a lot of people don't understand is they changed the definition of queer to mean a political act of rebellion against capitalism. And that makes sense, right? Because the 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. And guess what? And Barefoot in Alaska, I don't mean to make fun of you. That's not my intention. So I hope you'll take this in the spirit in which it is. The left right now is tricking the right to attack capitalism. This is a trick. I didn't wrap my head around this fully until like 2 hours ago. All of this stuff with ESG, it is to trick the conservative right into rebelling against capitalism. I'm not in a position to fully explain this one yet. And I understand why you're saying that. I understand because like listen man, I'm very much a fan of like if you don't support something, don't buy it. Like I don't like it makes no difference to me at all, but I think that this is an important nuance that people are not thinking about. And Barefoot in Alaska, I didn't think about it until a couple hours ago. So we're on the same page, okay? I don't mean it as a personal knock or a personal attack. So, guys, that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a little review from Socialism Saturday to talk about what the definition of queer actually is so that you all can understand it as well. And then we're going to apply it because I got to give it to Cassandra, man. Cassandra McDonald over at Timcast. Check this out. Disneyland has a mustached man in a dress greeting children at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique dress shop. Could you have had a more perfect like example of queer in action at Disneyland right now? So we're going to read this story and this is a real thing. They've got video of it and everything. I have to my hat is off figuratively, of course, not literally. My hat is off to Cassandra for this reporting. This is quite a get. And we're going to talk about that on the stream. And then one last thing we're going to talk about today is did anyone catch what happened to Ted Cruz yesterday? I'm working on an article for the Substack right now about this. But Ted Cruz yesterday got himself in, well, a little bit of a kerfuffle because Ted Cruz says we shouldn't have laws criminalizing homosexuality and imposing the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, which I actually think sounds like a pretty reasonable statement. But you guys, I talk about woke on the political right and woke on the political left. All right. I talk about both. Now, woke exists on both the right and the left. Woke just means authoritarian. Authoritarianism can exist on the right. Authoritarianism can exist on the left. And I'm asked all the time, Carlin, I just don't know what you're talking about with woke on the political right. I don't know anyone who's woke on the political right. Do you have any examples of woke on the right at all? Because I don't think that woke exists on the right and you're lying and you are a woke leftist, Carlin. I can't believe you're saying that the right is woke. Well, Ted Cruz got attacked by the Christian nationalists on Twitter yesterday for saying that we shouldn't make laws criminalizing homosexuality and imposing the death penalty for homosexuality. So I'm going to show you guys what woke on the right looks like because I'm tired of being told it doesn't exist. It does exist. The most overt way that it exists right now is in the form of Christian nationalists and this moral majority satanic panic part 2 that is taking over the conservative right now and has been for a really long time. And this is real. These are real people. These are conservatives. These are not secret leftists. These are not people pretending to be conservatives. These are real conservatives. These are real Christian nationalists. And yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it because if you want me to rag on the woke left all of the time, which I have no problem doing, but you don't want to acknowledge the bad apples on your side who are acting no differently than the woke leftists, then you're no different than the woke leftists, so far as I'm concerned. If you wonder why people on the left can't wake up to what their side is doing, I'll point you to the people on the right, on the conservative right, who can't wake up to what their side is doing. Because both sides are the same, two sides of the same coin. They both act exactly the same. Horseshoe theory is a thing, and that's just going to be the way it goes. All right, guys, so that's what we're going to cover on the show today. Now, as a reminder, this is not my last stream of the day. It is but my second stream of the day. I got up this morning, I had some shit to deal with, and then I got home and we did our first stream, which was the Red May finale episode earlier today. I then had a little bit of a break. Now we're doing this. And at 9:30 tonight, I will be back, because it is Tuesday night, and Tuesdays are nothing remotely controversial night on this channel, where I bring Joshua the Psychic onto the channel with me, and we have a show called Nothing Remotely Controversial, where we talk about the news and whatever is going on in the world, and Joshua, who is a real live professional psychic, uses his psychic and astrology powers to help us peer beneath the surface and let us know what is really going on in the world today. And it's a fun show, and you don't have to believe in psychics to come, and we still have a great time. And Joshua, of course, is a delight, and all you guys come for Joshua, and I just happen to be there too. But it is a way to blow off steam. It's bringing a little levity into the situation, and we are going to do that at 9:30 tonight. I'm confused. Are you saying Ted Cruz is woke on the right or Uganda? I am saying that the people who attacked Ted Cruz in the 5,000 comments attacking Ted Cruz are woke. 5,000 quote tweets attacking Ted Cruz because, and they're going to say, Ted Cruz is against the death penalty for rapists. Well, I strongly doubt that. That's not why they're attacking Ted Cruz. They're attacking Ted Cruz because Christian nationalists don't like the gays. They are attacking Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz is saying we shouldn't have laws against homosexuality, and Christian nationalists don't like the gays. Like this one right here. Ted Cruz calls the law of Moses grotesque and an abomination. This is supposedly the best that the Republican Party has to offer. That's what we're going to be looking at. And people can make all the excuses they want for them. People are going to say they're just against rape. No, they're not. Nope. Stop making excuses for the bad apples on your side. Stop. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But guys, for right now, we're going to start off with this article, What Queer Really Means, what you must what you must know to understand Drag Queen Story Hour, trans women, and gosh darn it, I can't speak today, apparently. Let me start again. Jesus Christ. What queer really means, what you must know to understand Drag Queen Story Hour, trans women and women's sports, and queering your kids in school. Queer is not about being gay. Queer is a political act of rebellion against capitalism. So why do I say that you need to understand this in order to understand Drag Queen Story Hour, trans women and women's sports, all of the things that they're doing every single time that queer pops up anywhere? Why do I say that this is all related? Because Drag Queen Story Hour is about destabilizing the system by going against the norm. Trans women in women's sports is about destabilizing the system by going against the norm. Transing your kids in school is about, say it with me, destabilizing the system by going against the norm. That's what this is. We have to start looking at, if you really want to understand why the woke left does what it does, you have to start looking at everything they do within the same framework. Because the problem that people encounter when they're trying to figure out what's going on is they look at what the woke left does from the framework of their own values, of their own perception of the world. And that's not going to work because the woke left has fundamentally different values than you do. I have a section on my Substack called The Woke Mind. You can get to it clicking right there. And if you have questions about this, I had the very first article I ever wrote in this series, why you should never expect the woke left to behave logically, because their values are not your values. Their goals are not your goals. When you expect the woke left to fit into your box, your values, your vision of how the world should be, when you call them out for their hypocrisy that they don't think is hypocritical, but it is based on your vision of how the world should be, you will fail every single time because you are not taking the time to understand that they have a completely different perception of the world. They have completely different values than you do. Okay? And one of those values is that everything they do is designed to destabilize the system. You know, Tim Pool acts dumb on this point. I don't think Tim Pool is dumb. I haven't figured out if he actually understands this and he's just playing dumb, or if he really hasn't wrapped his head around this point yet. He's not a dumb person, but he is acting dumb on this point every time I see him talking about it, where he says something to the effect of, I just don't understand why the left veers towards chaos. I just don't understand why the left supports villains. I don't understand why the left seems to do everything that is going to be counterproductive to a peaceful and functioning society. Either he is playing dumb to prove a point, or he has not yet wrapped his head around this idea that the woke left, like destabilizing the system, is not a bug. It's a feature, because all of their values are aligned around destabilization of the system, because destabilization of the system is the only way that we are ever going to get to Marxism. You cannot get to Marxism when people are happy. You cannot get to Marxism when society is great and everything is functioning great and people are making money and people are being productive and there's peace and calm and all this stuff. And my dog just started barking for no apparent reason. I have no idea what's going on there. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Oh gosh, there's really something going on downstairs. Hopefully my husband will take care of that. But in the meantime, we're going to take this super chat from Naruto. In dramatic voice, Christianity has entered its darkest hour. DEI has claimed Chick-fil-A. What will we poor, oppressed Christians do? Well, yes, I have seen the ring about Chick-fil-A having a diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And I'm going to be honest, it's not something I'm going to spend any time on right this second. But I do appreciate the super chat, Naruto. James Lindsay seems to be spending some time on it. A lot of people are complaining about it today. Listen, guys, here's the thing. I don't know that Chick-fil-A is actually doing anything bad. And so until the very existence of a diversity, equity, and inclusion program doesn't necessarily mean that something is bad. It just means that they created an office. Like, show me evidence, show me receipts, show me their training, show me their documents. Then it's time to freak out. But until you show me their documents, I'm not going to freak out just yet. So, and we're going to focus on other things. Let's see. As Tate says, I think Tim Pool knows what's going on. He just can't understand why anyone would want to think so illogically. Well, if he knew what was going on, then he should really explain that to his audience, because he has not done that to the very best of my understanding. And so I have no reason to believe at this point that Tim actually does know what's going on. I think that, I mean, like, and if he does know what's going on and he has not explained it to his audience, then he's acting irresponsibly, so far as I'm concerned. So it's not good either way. And if someone has a clip of Tim explaining this to his audience in a way that is simple and cohesive, I would love to see it. If I'm wrong on this, I don't watch him, so I have no idea. But I'm pretty sure that if he did explain this, someone would tell me, because they tell me every time he wades around a topic like this. So if I'm wrong about Tim, let me know, but I don't think he's explained this. George says, I think he knows people have been attacked for being outspoken on the subject. Cough, Carlin cough, so he's hiding his hand. Well, that might be, but cowardice is not an excuse today, is it? All right, guys, let's jump into this article. And again, you can find this over on my Substack, Carlin, Karlyn, .substack.com. And do I have the sound set up? I do not have the sound set up. Give me one moment, please, because we are going to be watching some video with this. There we go. We've previously discussed how the woke left uses language as their greatest weapon. They speak in code, so in order to understand what their language really means, you have to listen to it in the context in their presentations to understand what the true definition is. And today we're going to see another example of that. So guys, what we're basically doing when we're approaching the woke ideology is something called forensic linguistics. Has anyone ever heard of forensic linguistics before? Anyone know what that is? I'm going to give you a hint. They used it to catch the Unabomber. Forensic linguistics is basically where you look at the language that people are using and the language and the specific cultural attributes of that language, like words that are specific to that culture, definitions that are specific to that culture, can give you a lot of information about who people are, what groups they're associated with. When I look at the different political factions in the country, and again, I'm detached. I don't really care about any of this stuff. Well, I care about it, but I care about it more from like a detached perspective where I'm looking down on it. Conservatives use very different language than Democrat. Okay, right wing alt right white nationalists, the alt right, the legitimate problem, the legitimate authoritarian right uses different language than conservatives use. Conservatives use different language than the politically homeless use. The politically homeless use different language than Democrats use. Democrats use different language than progressives use. Progressives use different language than socialists use, although there is an awful lot of overlap between progressives and socialists. And then you have like the farthest left of the far left, the true believers, they use different language as well. So, and you have the libertarians in there too. Libertarians also use different language, although many libertarians are now veering over to the alt right, which is not, I don't think, a good idea. Anyway, the point is that different political groups use different language. And they are using oftentimes the same words, but they use them in different ways based on the culture of that specific group. So when I say the word queer, you might hear it and think gay and trans people. When socialists and radical trans activists hear the word queer, they do not hear the definition of gay and trans people. That is not what it means to them. And we can only parse this out when we listen to them use the term in context so that we can actually hear the other words around what they're doing. Gloria says, do you think the non-religious progressives use the same language as the Christian progressives? I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, Gloria, because I don't know that I've looked at enough Christian progressives to understand the language that they're using. It's not a group I've been immersed in, to be honest with you. I don't see a lot of religion on the left. I really don't. I mean, I'm not suggesting that like Democrats and leftists they aren't religious, because some of them are. I just don't see a whole lot of religion on the left, and so I wouldn't know how to identify that right this second, but maybe it's something we'll look into in the future. All right. So now that we understand that how we're looking at terms is not necessarily the definition that they're going to give us, but we're looking at these terms and looking for the definition based on the context that the terms are used in. Is everyone tracking? Now let's look at the word queer. Queer used to be a slur against gay people. So it might be easy to assume that to be queer is to be gay, a lesbian, bisexual, etc. You could also apply it to trans people. But here's the problem. when queer activists, and we need to distinguish, guys, because trans people, just normal trans people, are not the same as queer activists. Nope, this is wrong. The socialist left and the progressive left do not talk about population control at all, in any way. And it honestly really drives me crazy. I know you're a conservative because you brought this up. Conservatives are the only ones using this talking point. Again, guys, I track all of the different groups. Conservatives are the only ones using this talking point. Conservatives are the only people saying it's about population control. The left does not talk about this at all. In fact, the left is afraid that the right is trying to control the population. I didn't need to read your previous comment. I know exactly who you are based on the fact that you said that the left is interested in population control. But let's read it. I like to refer to the powers that be the elites. Anyways, the reason they are pushing the LGBTQ stuff is because they all have one thing in common. What is it? None of them can have children. Nope. Wrong again, conservative. Wrong again. Wrong again. Wrong again. So many words and so wrong. Guys, does anyone want to educate our conservative friend about why it doesn't matter that leftists don't have children? And why it is not about population control? Does anyone in the chat want to educate our friend about why they are wrong about that talking point? I will show the answers on the screen. In the meantime, Jackie H says the left has taken over the unity churches and the Episcopalian religion. That doesn't surprise me at all, Jackie. VT Num, thank you for the super chat. All right, now going back to our conservative friends' notion that the left is going to die out because they can't have children and it's a population control message, which is only something you hear on the conservative right. The left never talks about this. They in fact talk about the opposite of it. The reason that it doesn't matter if they don't have kids, it doesn't matter if they abort all their babies, they have your children. They have your children. The left controls education. They don't need to have their own children. They control education, so they have your children. They are also trying to abolish the family. Abolish the family is a key talking point on the socialist left that we hear come up over and over and over and over again. We heard it in the late fascism presentation today. They were doing abolish the family stuff in the socialist presentation we watched earlier today that wasn't even about abolish the family. The leftists will indoctrinate your children in the schools. They don't need to have their own. The leftists want to destroy the biological family. They want to get rid of the biological family unit, and they want all children in society to be born via surrogacy. There is a book called Full Surrogacy Now, Abolish the Family on Amazon. It is lectured about in major Ivy League universities all over the world. All children will be everyone's children. You guys are studying. Exactly. And that, conservatives, is why we listen to what the left actually says, because conservatives don't understand what the left is saying. And they come up with these crazy ideas and these crazy talking points that have no basis in reality, which means they're fighting the wrong problem. But let's get back to queer, shall we? Being queer, as the trans activists define it, and the trans activists, by the way, are all Marxists. I hope we understand that. As the trans activists define the term queer, it has nothing to do with being gay or trans. They just use that to make you think that they care about gay and trans people. Instead, they perceive queer as being an act of rebellion against the system. And that system is capitalism. And you can see all of this if you come to Socialism Saturday or watch some of the previous streams. But in order to understand why that is, I'm going to show you guys some clips from this past weekend, Socialism Saturday. The clips will have my my commentary in them from watching them. And it will be a review for people who were at Socialism Saturday, but I've weeded it down to the most important bits, and we're gonna go through some of these clips, okay? But before we get into that, there is the framework that we need to understand, because if you want to understand the woke left, as I said at the beginning, you have to look at it through a framework. Once you look at it through a framework, you will understand what they're really up to. So, the four goals of the woke left are always and forever the same thing. 1, gain as much power as possible. 2, use that power to destabilize the system by causing problems. 3, attack capitalism by blaming it as the cause of the problem that they themselves caused when they destabilized the system. And 4, usher in their Marxist utopia after they undermine the public faith in capitalism. Okay? So those are the four goals. Those four goals are consistent across every single thing the woke left does. Everything. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. No matter what they do, they are always trying to meet at least one, but possibly more of those goals. Okay? Now, the very first thing that I was asked in the stream on Saturday is, are when we're watching socialists, are they actually going to define what queer means? And here's what I said when Kazmar was lovely enough to ask that question. Do you think they will give a definition of queer? No, because in the previous presentations that we've watched, they don't define queer. In fact, they say that queer is undefinable. But if I was to have it to give it a definition, anything that is outside of the norm, or like normativity, heteronormativity, cis normativity, whatever the hell normativity, that's going to be the definition of queer. Is anything that goes, remember, the four goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. So the definition of queer is going to be whatever is going to allow them to gain power by destabilizing the system. The system is the norm, what we all exist in right now. So queer is going to go directly against the norm. Whatever the norm is, it's going to be the opposite of that. All right. Is everyone tracking on that? Whatever the norm is, queer is going to be the opposite of that. That was my posit on what the definition of queer would be. Beth, thank you for the super chat. It's like banging your head against the wall. I'm sharing your videos, but of course it's not happening in our school. I could strangle them. Not that I'm promoting violence. Beth, I completely understand. I completely understand. And the reason I understand is that even though we have completely debunked this conservative who came in with conservative talking points that have nothing to do with what we're talking about, and we debunked them instantly, the elites will indoctrinate the children that are born. That doesn't mean there's no push to bring down the population. There is no left-wing push to bring down the population. There is no left-wing push to bring down the population. This is a right-wing conspiracy theory. This is a distraction. We listen to these people talk all the time. They do not talk about this. They are afraid of the right doing this. They are afraid of the right engaging in eugenics. They are afraid of the right engaging in population control. This is not a left-wing talking point. This is a right-wing conspiracy theory. So, Beth, I completely know what it's like to bang your head on the wall constantly when people won't listen and watch what's put right in front of them because they would rather engage in conspiracy theory bullshit. I do understand. But we just got to keep going. All right. So my definition of queer, as I just described it in that video, actually turned out to be pretty dead on. Every activist we will hear in the next couple of clips will waffle around the same definition. Queer is a political act. Being queer is not about being gay. It was at one time, but when they reclaimed the word, they changed the definition. And the woke left does this with language all the time. We've already talked about that. Guys, there is not a single effing left wing activist that gives a flying flip about Bill Gates. For people who have been attending Socialism Saturday every day for 9 months, have we ever heard Bill Gates mentioned? There is not a single activist on the left that cares about Bill Gates at all. This is a right wing talking point. It is not a left wing talking point. They never talk about him. So now I really want to refocus everyone because listen, I can debunk all of the right wing conspiracy theories on another day, but can we please focus on the thing that matters in the chat? Like, there's actual stuff that is real, and what I'm seeing in the chat right now is a focus on nonsense and like made up conspiracy theories on the right. Can we focus on the things that we have evidence for? This is one of the reasons why the right is absolutely hopeless in terms of actually beating the woke left, because they would rather focus on conspiracy theories than the information that is quite literally in front of them, like right now. So let's focus back. No. Barefoot in Alaska, you're cool. You're cool. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm actually not like that annoyed at you. I'm annoyed at people who are distracting from the issue. Okay, let's go back. So now we're going to go into a couple more complex clips from Socialism Saturday. Hang on, I got a super chat coming in from Philosophist. They want control. Yes, Philosophist, fucking beautiful. Beautiful. They want control of the population, not population control. Does everyone understand the difference between those two things? They want control of the population. They do not care at all about population control. So the first clip we're going to watch is from a book launch event. And essentially, the guy that we're going to hear is going to come up and he's going to talk about how he is a radical leftist and he started a porn business to rebel against the idea of the norm. Remember, the definition of queer, listen for how he's using it in context. Queer is not about being gay. Queer is about rebelling against the norm, rebelling against the system, rebelling against capitalism. And you will hear me doing a little bit of additional commentary, which was contemporaneous. I did it kind of off the top of my head, and you'll hear my talking points in there as well. Let's listen.
Went back to finish my degree with every intention of going into academia and becoming an intellectual of some sort. But in DC, I discovered naked dancing, and I discovered that I could make money off of my body and support myself in that way. And given what I had come to understand from queer left thinking and queer left work, I went really hard in that direction. So, for me, dancing, sex work, pornography became a way of expressing my radical sort of position within the world, my desire to live a queer life, my desire to live a non-corporate life, a non-assimilated life. And like I said, I went really hard that way for like over a decade. And
See, what did I tell you? The whole thing about queer culture, it has nothing to do with, it honestly really doesn't have anything to do with being gay. It has nothing to do with who you sleep with. Queer is about not assimilating to normal, normie, cis heteronormative culture. It is about rebelling against everything that most people in society do, rebelling against having a traditional biological family, rebelling against kind of like getting married, settling down. They don't want to do any of this stuff, having a relationship that only has like, two people in it. They're very big on polyamorous relationships. There's a town, Somerville, Massachusetts, just legalized polyamorous marriage. So like marriage, basically polygamy, marriage with more than like two people in it. And so when you think queer, they're never going to define it because queer defies definition in the eyes of these people. Queer is anything that destabilizes the system. Again, 4 goals of the woke left: gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, and then usher in their Marxist utopia. Queer is fundamentally designed to destabilize the system by actively rebelling against every staple that upholds American society. Does that make sense to people?
And I started a porn business, which I've been in for maybe 13, 14 years. Which for a long time did feel very radical, particularly, making gay fetish sex videos was really liberating for a long time. Although recently it's come to feel more just sort of like another sort of capitalistic kind of enterprise. So I've sort of fallen out of love with that. And I'm now reapproaching my first love, queer left thinking and queer theory, and trying to bring through school of thought to trying to assimilate a lot of my life experience within sex work and kind of being really on the fringe of gay sexuality and that world, and sort of bring it together with sort of my theoretical world and my intellectual world. And the pieces that I've done so far on School of Thought have talked about assimilation.
And by the way, guys, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with, again, doing sex work, doing porn. As long as it's voluntary, there's nothing wrong with, like, being into fetish stuff. We like what we like. There's nothing inherently wrong about that. And those aren't necessarily acts of political activism, okay? Where it crosses into queer theory and critical theory is that you engage in sex work because it's a rebellion against the system. It's why you're doing it. It's not necessarily, I'm sure it's enjoyable enough, right? But like, it's the reason that matters. There are people who engage in sex work because it's a way to pay the bills and maybe it's a job that they enjoy. Okay, fine. This guy is doing it because maybe it's a way to pay the bills, it's a job he enjoys, and he sees it as a direct rebellion against the system. It destabilizes the system. He does porn and makes porn and does fetish stuff because it is a direct rebellion against the system. It's not just about like you like what you like. So the why is important. And this is why, like, I will never demonize like people who do sex work or who like porn or things like that, because like, who really cares? What you do with your body is your business. But if you're doing it directly to rebel against the system, then I'm going to go, okay, what is this really all about then? Because for most people, watching porn is not actually a political act. Why are you making it a political act? It's the political act that's the problem. All right. Does everyone understand the distinction there? All right. So he's not doing porn just because, it's a job that he wanted. He's doing porn because it's a political act of rebelling against the system, a political act of rebelling against capitalism. Is that clear to everyone? Please ask questions if you have them, guys. This is supposed to be about learning these concepts and really installing them in our heads. Milo, thank you for the super chat. Once again, there is an actual communist revolution going on in America, but conservatives keep sending their kids to public schools and worrying about WEF conspiracies while their kids are made queer. That's exactly right, Milo. That's exactly right. Conservatives right now are chasing their damn tail all over the battlefield. They're chasing their tail with books and libraries. They're chasing their tail with the boycotts. By the way, conservatives are never going to be able to boycott all the companies that are funding places like Glisten or doing ESG. I hope people understand that. It's a massive effort to get them all chasing their tail and focusing on the things that don't matter, so that while conservatives are distracted and focusing on things that don't matter, the woke left is continuing their long march through the institutions of taking over the damn schools and queering all the kids. This is like the very definition of like, you've got the magician doing the trick over here, And you've got the magician's assistant who is wearing a sparkling dress that's really tight and shows her boobs and her butt and all that. And she's twirling around the stage over here. The magician's assistant is twirling over here while the magician is doing the actual trick over here. And people are so distracted by the magician's assistant because she's got sparkles and boobs and twirling that they miss how the trick is done. Because how the trick is done is boring. How the trick is done is not entertainment. And that's where they get conservatives every time. They distract them with the twirling and the sparkles and the porn and the WEF and all this stuff. And while they're distracted and chasing their tail all over the damn battlefield, the left is doing the trick over here. And they're none the wiser to it. And they don't find out until it's way, way, way too late. And then they whine and they cry and they complain, how come no one told us? Well, you were told. You were told explicitly. You were told exactly what was happening, and you didn't listen because you were distracted by the sparkles and the boobs, okay? Thank you, Milo, for the super chat. Brian says, how does the Q now fit in the context of the LGBTQIA LMNOP, not if it's not about gender and sexual minorities? Because they are trying to co-opt all of the LGBTQ stuff to make it about destabilizing the system. The Q has never fit in with this. And now what they're doing is they've also confused conservatives too on this one, because conservatives now want to group the T and the Q together and to kick them out of the LGB. Well, trans people, like regular trans people, don't want anything to do with this. So they're actually splintering it even further. But the Q has never fit in. The Q is only an act of political rebellion. That's all it stands for. You can be straight and cis and still be considered queer, because all you have to do to be queer is identify as such. Let me go through the chat, see if there are any questions. Let me go. Well, Pineapple Girl, you don't get to make the rules for other people's lives. You only get to make the rules for your life. The minute that you start trying to make rules for other people's lives is the minute you become an authoritarian, and I don't tend to do well around authoritarians. What people do with their guys, if you are worried about if you are worried and focusing all your energy and attention on what people are doing with their own body, then you are going to lose. Focus on your own life. Focus on your own side. Don't worry about what other people are doing with their body in the privacy of their own home, or even if they're doing it on camera and on the internet. Who cares? It's their body. It's not your body. And again, it's a distraction. Let me just go through the chat. Shauna says, Pac-Man is already accusing conservatives of projection. He said conservatives are the real cancelers. Well, conservatives are the real cancelers. Cancel culture started with conservatives, but both sides cancel is the truth. Yes, both sides absolutely cancel. Cancel culture started with the Dixie Chicks. That was conservatives. That wasn't the left. That was conservatives. Nope, not true. Not true. What we are talking about, and again, guys, this is what we need to start wrapping our heads around. Gay has nothing to do with queer. Gay and queer are not the same thing. Queer has nothing to do with a person being gay. I know this is going to be real difficult for conservatives to wrap their heads around because they're obsessed with what people do with their own bodies, but if you don't wrap your head around it, you're going to lose. You can find anything you want gross, but when you spend all your time saying, ew, gays are icky, ew, gross, I don't like gay people, you look like the homophobes the left says you are. You look ridiculous. You look like a child. So you can have whatever opinion you want, but saying it all the time and whining about what other people do with their body is not going to get you anywhere. So it's a matter of priorities, bro. What is your greatest priority today? Hating the gays or actually winning? Let me see. Exactly. Jenna's got it, and Jenna's new, so no new people have any excuses. It is a queer agenda. And queer has nothing to do with gay people. It has nothing to do with trans people. It has nothing to do with any of that. Queer is a political movement. All right. Good. Let's keep. Do not tell me what to do in my own chat, bro. Just because you got told to stop hating gay people. So, how do we keep them from gaining power without destabilizing the system? They've already gained power. You can't keep them from gaining power. The only thing you can do now is fight back strategically to take the power they have away from them. They control every major institution in this country. They control the colleges. They control the K through 12 schools, which means they control the future because they control the education of the children. They control media. They control news. They control entertainment. They control the churches. They control the government. They control corporate America. There is nothing that you can do to prevent them from taking power because they've already taken power when the right wasn't paying attention. And now our little friend Marco is about to get his ass blocked because he's not smart enough to be here. I'm sorry, guys. You need an IQ of at least a 100 to be able to interact with my content. I don't make the rules. It's just the way it goes. So you can't take power away from them, or excuse me, you can't prevent them from taking power. The only thing you can do is to be strategic to start to take the power back. And that's not a topic we're going to have time to get into today. No, there are not less babies born this way. Does anyone want to tell Studio Owl, who should damn well know better because Studio Owl's been watching my content for a while? Does anyone want to tell Studio Owl why there are not, in fact, less babies born this way? We can do this all day, guys. We can do this all day. Shuffler says, Mott, queer is being not heterosexual / cisgender. Bailey, queer is the qualitative position of opposition to presentations of stability and a total rejection of the regime, of the normal. Beautiful, Shuffler. Beautiful. Love it. Exactly. It is about destroying the nuclear family, but that doesn't mean there are going to be less babies born. Surrogacy, surrogacy, surrogacy. The left wants all children born via surrogacy. They're not having less babies. They're birthing children via surrogacy. And we've still got our conservative conspiracy theorist over here talking about nothing, screaming into the wind, not saying anything of value, just like fucking old man screaming at the sky. Let's keep going. So we just saw a far left queer activist talking about how he engaged in a career in porn in order to rebel against the system. Now I want to introduce you to Violet. Who is here for Socialism Saturday? Who met Violet already? If you have not met Violet already, Violet is a trip. Violet is a radical queer activist from India, I think, or I think obviously from India. I don't know if they're still in India. And Violet really liked to say the quiet part out loud. Violet wrote a chapter, I think, in the book Transgender Marxism, which I now have to read because my community bribed me to torture myself. And Violet is going to Violet had a lot to say. She did. They did. We did. I'm pretty sure Violet's pronouns are we, which is weird. But there are many more things that are weird about Violet. So now we're going to watch a couple clips about Violet. In the first clip, Violet is going to teach us that queer is about rejecting the normal. Okay? Queer is rejecting the normal. I don't mean to be hateful to you, Beth. You can say Beth is the queen of the chat. I'm not being hateful to Beth. Everyone be nice to Beth. And Shuffler says, Violet was the final proof for me that transgender Marxism is really real. All right, let's listen to what Violet had to say.
If queer is not merely an identity, but as the Mary Nardini gang point out, the qualitative position of opposition to presentations of stability and a total rejection.
Violet just defined being queer as the qualitative opposition to presentations of stability and is about to say, I think, a total rejection of something related to normativity. To be queer is opposition to the presentations of stability. What is the second goal of the woke left? Destabilize the system. I'm sorry that we're going back and listening to things a couple times, guys, but I really think that this is important because I want you to hear from their mouth what they believe, and it can get a little complicated, and sometimes it can be easy to kind of like glaze over because it's boring, but that's why we go back and we listen a couple times because I really want you guys to hear and understand it. Let's listen again.
The law, and that involves refusing to constitute one's body as a source of labor power. As Michelle pointed out earlier, all work comes with gendered expectations. If queer is not merely an identity, but as the Mary Nardini gang point out, the qualitative position of opposition to presentations of stability and a total rejection of the regime of the normal, then we can understand.
To be queer is a total rejection of the regime of the normal. Do you guys know now why when we're in like happy hour and we're watching the less advanced like woke trainings, they refuse to define the word queer? They say queer has no definition. Queer is impossible to define. No, we have just heard from the queer Marxists who have an essay in the book Transgender Marxism that to be queer is a total rejection of the regime of the normal. We got our definitions, guy. Thank you, Violet. Let's listen one more time. We're not going to listen one more time for right now because I want to keep things moving, but you guys are welcome to go and listen to the full clip for yourself. We've got a couple more clips I want to go through, but that was the part I wanted you to hear. Violet saying queer is a rejection of the regime of the normal. Everyone tracking? Now, do you know what else queer means? It's also a rejection of capitalism because in our society, normal, the system that they are trying to destabilize is capitalism. All right. And so I know I repeat this a lot, but I really think it's important to make people memorize it because I'm going to make you memorize it whether you like it or not. The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever. Gain as much power as possible. Destabilize the system. That's what they've done so far. Queer is a rejection of the normal. Queer is about destabilizing the system. Now they are going to attack capitalism because the whole point of destabilizing the system is to cause problems that they can blame on capitalism, because ultimately the goal of everything they're doing is to attack capitalism, to undermine faith and confidence in capitalism so they can usher in their Marxist utopia as a replacement to capitalism. Beth says, I got my copy of Trans Marxism tomorrow. Oh no, Beth. We're both going to go insane, Beth. I was thinking about starting to read it last night and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I read a different book instead. I read a book about narcissism instead. But we'll enjoy that together, Beth. Brennan says, I can't wait to read James Lindsay's book. I'll get Carlin's tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you, guys. You can get my book at activelyunwoke.com. It is called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. So we know now queer is a rejection of the regime of the normal. Now let's listen to Violet again. And Violet is going to give us an additional commentary about queer activists rejecting capitalism. I don't need to read it online, Barefoot in Alaska. I did the audio version of the book. You can buy it on Audible. I read the whole thing. I actually did read it in my locals community. I live streamed the recording of the audiobook in my locals community for my supporters. That was a fun little game that we played. Anyway, let's listen to the clip.
What we wanted to do instead was flip the script altogether. Instead of saying that transsubjectivity was rooted in a desire to do away with one's body, we wanted to suggest inverse, that dysphoria is nothing but the howl of the body's anguish against its appropriation by sexuation and its insertion into the capitalist mode of production.
Holy shit. That is a mouthful. I want to read you what Violet just said. Thank God we have subtitles. Hang on. Gender dysphoria is nothing more than the body's anguish against its appropriation by sexualization and its insertion into... Oh shit, they don't have the shit. Hang on. And its insertion into the capitalist system. So Violet has just defined gender dysphoria as the body's anguish against its appropriation and insertion into the capitalist system. Let's listen to that again, because that was crazy.
Arguments, but reprising the discussion about the merits of such arguments is beyond the scope of our piece. What we wanted to do instead was flip the script altogether. Instead of saying that transsubjectivity was rooted in a desire to do away with one's body, we wanted to suggest inverse, that dysphoria is nothing but the howl of the body's anguish against its appropriation by sexuation and its insertion into the capitalist mode of production. In his book, Spinoza, Practical Philosophy.
So, gender dysphoria is the body's howl of the anguish that it feels because of its sexuation and insertion into the capitalist forms of production. What does that even mean? So then, referencing back to the last presentation we saw where being a porn star was a political act, engaging in fetish porn was a political act. In this case, being trans is a political act against the capitalist system that has appropriated the body, and being trans is the howl of the anguish and the political act of rebelling against the capitalist system that has appropriated their body. Being trans in queer Marxism and queer theory, being trans is an act of rebellion against capitalism. Do people understand? Again, the 4 goals of the woke left are gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. They see being trans as an act of destabilizing the system. They see being trans as an act of rebelling against capitalism. Does everyone understand? I know this is a little bit tricky to wrap your head around, but when you wrap your head around the idea that to be queer, as they define it, is to rebel against cis heteronormativity, normativity in general, anything that's within the normal scope of what upholds the system that we are all existing in. To be queer is an act of rebellion against the system. That system is capitalism. Is everyone tracking? Is everyone tracking with the Socialism Saturday review? I know this is a lot, and I know that this goes against a lot of things that you guys have been taught and understand. But this is, again, one of those moments, just like understanding that white supremacy doesn't have to do with skin color, it has to do with capitalism. This is one of those moments. You must understand that queer has nothing to do with being gay or trans or bi or a lesbian or any of those things. It only has to do with rebellion against the system, and the system is capitalism. James Jones, so is Violet saying that come the revolution, there won't be any more trans people? Well, no, there won't be any more trans people because they don't want people to be trans. They want people to be non-binary. The goal of queer Marxism, or excuse me, of transgender Marxism, which is odd because they called it transgender Marxism, but really queer Marxism would have been a much better title. They want to abolish the gender binary. They want to liberate people from the gender binary. When you abolish the gender binary, you abolish men and women. You no longer have trans people. Because what are you transitioning to? You only have non-binary people, a world of theys. So, quite literally, in Violet's ideology, there will be no trans people because we will all be non-binary. Kind of fucked up, right? And then just to put the cherry on top, just in case anyone is confused, let's listen to this one final blurb where they lay out explicitly our favorite abolish the family activist, Sophie. We love Sophie. Sophie says the quiet part out loud all the time. Our favorite abolish the family activist, Sophie, is going to put just the cherry on top and explicitly tell us that you cannot have queer liberation, you cannot have trans liberation without abolishing capitalism.
Do transgender Marxists abolish the family? I suppose this is not a question I feel like posing in separation from the question of abolishing capitalism. Your book's blurb is very clear. That in order to achieve transgender liberation, abolishing capitalism is the sine qua non. These things cannot happen separate from one another.
These things cannot happen separately from one another. Everything is always and forever the same with these people. And everyone you see on the woke left, all of the useful innocents or the useful idiots, depending on how you feel about them today, all of the true believers, the people with the crazy hair that are screaming and doing the protests and having, setting fire to things and defending looting and all that stuff, it all comes from these people. Every bit of chaos that you are seeing on the woke left, every time they do something insane, every time you find out about a new policy to queer your kids in school, every time there's a drag queen story hour, every time we're complaining about trans women in women's sports, every single thing that the woke left is doing comes from these people. It is a trickle down. And so if you want to know where the woke left is going, you listen to these people and they will tell you what they're doing. They will tell you what they're plotting. They will coordinate live on the internet. We can all go and watch this stuff. We have been for 9 effing months. Anytime you think of the word queer, you have to remind yourself that it is not about being gay or trans. It is an act of political rebellion against the system, specifically so they can undermine capitalism. When you understand that, you will understand why they are doing all the crazy things. They are. From drag queen story hour to trans women in women's sports to queering your kids in school. It's not about creating a more fair and just society for all. It's about gaining power and destabilizing the system so they can attack capitalism and usher in their Marxist utopia. Would I consider this ideology a religion? I don't think it matters in the slightest. And here's why this doesn't matter. Because if it is a religion, they're still trying to destabilize the system. If it's not a religion, they're still trying to destabilize the system. This is a question that has no purpose other than when people on the right want to say, it's demonic. We are in a spiritual warfare. It is their religion against ours. It does not matter in the slightest. It makes no difference at all. Functionally, the goal is the same. And the goal is what we should be working on. So now we have beaten that dead horse for an hour and 15 minutes. I hope everyone understands the true definition of queer. And now we're going to move into showing you guys how queer shows up in real life. So guys, please mount that like button for me if you would be so kind. Let's look at an example. And we're going to look at an example of From All Places Timcast, but Cassandra did a great job with this one. And so we have to give credit where credit is due and all that good stuff. Let's look at an example of how this shows up in real life. Disneyland has a mustached man in a dress greeting children at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique dress shop. Remember, this is being done not to make the world better for trans people, not to be inclusive, not for any of that purpose. This is meant to destabilize the system. Let me just make the screen a little bigger. Disneyland now has a mustached man in a dress greeting little girls at the salon and dress shop Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. The high-priced dress shop takes children through getting princess ready, complete with magic mirrors and a salon where they can get their hair and makeup done after selecting the perfect princess dress to wear as they visit the theme park. Makeovers at the boutique are limited to children ages 3 through 12. In previous years, little girls and their parents would be met at the door by one of the fairy godmothers in training, usually a young woman who would help them decide their perfect princess makeover. Now the ultra woke company seems to have changed things up a little bit. In a video posted to Twitter, a mustached man in heavy makeup is seen introducing himself to a child as one of the fairy godmother apprentices. Let's watch this video. I do have the sound on.
So my name's Nick. I'm one of Fairy Godmother's apprentices. I'm here to shop you around and make all your selections for the day.
Why might they do that? Why is Disneyland, in the land of queer ideology, as we just spent an hour venturing through, why might Disneyland hire a mustached man, put that mustached man in a dress to be a fairy godmother apprentice to help 3 through 12-year-old girls pick out a pretty princess dress to wear at the theme park for the day? Why might that happen? Nope. Not correct. Not correct, Jane. You got to go back, watch the beginning of the video. Because the real action is your reaction. I think that's part of it. Because they're taking your children, they're pushing the ideology on your children, they're normalizing it to your children, they are making your children queer from the time they're little kids. They are introducing them to the queer ideology because it disrupts normativity. How does it disrupt normativity? It abolishes the gender binary. And what does all that lead to? Destabilization of the system. Okay? So you guys got, like many of you got components of the answer. But when, again, Every single thing that the woke left does, I know I've repeated it already 15 times on this stream, but we're going to make it 16 just to be sure. Every single thing the woke left does is to gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. So now let's watch the video again. The woke left has gained power because they control Disney, all right? They already control Disney. They don't need to gain any more power. Now we're focusing on the rest of our 3 goals, using the power that they've already gained through gaining control of Disney to destabilize the system, attack capitalism, and usher in their Marxist utopia. Let's just watch it again. And given that framework of this is what the woke left always does, why are they putting a mustached man in a dress named Nick? We're not talking about a trans man here because Nick's name is Nick. Catch that? Why are they putting a mustached man in a dress as a fairy godmother's assistant to help young girls become pretty princesses? Let's watch again.
So my name's Nick. I'm one of Fairy Godmother's apprentices. I'm here to shop you around and make all your selections for the day.
I have said it a million times that the left doesn't need to have their own children. They can abort all their children from Kingdom Come and it will make no difference because they don't need their own children. They are going to take yours. The primary place that they are taking your children is in the public schools. However, they're also doing stuff like this. The man in the dress destabilizes the gender binary. That's exactly right. They're destabilizing the gender binary. They're teaching kids when they are too young to defend themselves that there is no such thing as a gender binary. Those kids are going to grow up and eventually become adults who believe there is no such thing as the gender binary. The gender binary is one of the things upholding the biological family. One of the key goals of the woke left is to abolish the biological family. It is literally in the Communist Manifesto. We're doing advanced level shit on this channel, guys. I really want you to see through all of the bullshit. I want you to see through all of the reading. I want you to see through all of the complaining. I want you to see through all of it. And I want you to get to the core of why this is happening. Because if you don't understand why this is happening, you will be constantly chasing your tail, which is exactly what the left wants. Disney has a man in a dress store for little girls at Disneyland. This is who Disney wants girls to see when they first walk in to pick out a dress. A Twitter user named Jason Jones tweeted with the video. In 2022, Inside the Magic reported boutique cast members were formerly called Fairy Godmothers in Training, but will now be called Fairy Godmothers Apprentices, according to an update on Disneyland Resort and Walt Disney World's website. The report added, the change is more gender inclusive. So they're getting rid of gendered language. This isn't the only way they're getting rid of gendered language. We know that Disney has gotten rid of ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. They don't say that anymore because they're getting rid of gendered language, because the woke left wants to abolish the gender binary because that will destabilize the system. The change is more gender inclusive. Anytime you see gender inclusive, think abolish the gender binary. And will now allow cast members who don't identify as female to participate in magical bibbidi-bobbidi boutique makeovers. Isn't that nice? This is just one of many ways Disney is trying to push more inclusivity. Recently, Disney changed the opening of the fireworks show and removed the phrase, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Disney cast members have also a less strict dress code because that will also help them to be more gender inclusive. King Peter of the chat says they only have one goal, destabilize the system. Nope. Nope. Peter, you got to think about why they have that goal. Gaining power and disrupting capitalism are sub-goals. They believe communist utopia will appear naturally when the system falls. It is true that the primary thing that they're working towards right now mostly is destabilizing the system, but don't confuse it, Peter. Just because it is a primary goal, like the ultimate goal, the only real goal they have is usher in their Marxist utopia. If anything, gaining as much power as possible, destabilizing the system, and attacking capitalism are all sub-goals of usher in their Marxist utopia. They just haven't gotten there yet. We're on goal 2 as the main focus of what they're doing because that's a function of the long march through institutions. The long march through institutions was goal number 1, gain as much power as possible. Now they've done that. That goal is pretty much crossed off the list. I mean, it's still there because it's power is one of the things that they covet above all others. But the reason we don't focus on that one is because they've already done it. Now they've moved on to destabilizing the system as the primary thing they're working on. But that doesn't mean that the other goals are sub-goals to that. The real goal is Marxism. The real goal has always been Marxism. The real goal will always be Marxism. Everything they're doing leads to that 4th goal. Let me see. And they do have the power. They own the schools. Exactly. So guys, how does everyone feel about that? We have now walked through what the real definition of queer is. We have now looked at an example of queer in real life. Can anyone else think of an example while we're on this topic of other ways that queer has shown up in real life? Rottweiler says, exactly. James Lindsay has been saying it's all about Marxism and what the cons get and what cons get backlash. And thanks for the insight yesterday. I stand corrected. Oh, you're very welcome, Rottweiler. It's what I'm here for. King Peter the chat says there can be no positive vision of the utopia, only critique. Well, that doesn't matter, Peter. Again, that's your version of reality. It's not their version of reality. It's your version of it. No, there are no white pills tonight, Gloria, but we're doing nothing remotely controversial later, so that'll be a little bit better, I think. All right. Guys, I think that's where I'm going to end the stream today. We were going to do this Ted Cruz thing. Hang on, I'll show you. We were going to do this Ted Cruz thing, and I was going to show you an example of woke on the right, but I don't want to do this today. We'll do this tomorrow. I want to get my thoughts in order on this one, and I want to do a little bit more work cataloging it. But we've gone through a lot, guys. This is a lot. And I think what I want to do is I want to let everyone sit with this, and I want to let it percolate. And if you're kind of feeling like, oh my God, what the hell? Like, that's normal, okay? It's basically like this is like when you red pill and you're told that everything you know is true is wrong. All right. This is a lot to wrap your head around. And so I want to encourage people, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments. Questions. Not, Carlin, I don't think you really know what you're talking about. And I don't want to hear that shit. I don't want to hear it. Because there has never been a single conservative who's shown up in my comments saying, well, Carlin, you're almost there, but what you're really missing is it's demonic. No, it's not. Nope. I don't want to hear that shit. If you have questions, let me know. I don't want to hear conspiracy theories. I don't want to hear right-wing talking points. I will answer any and all questions asked in good faith because we all need to wrap our heads around this one. This is a big piece of the puzzle, guys. But once you get this and you combine it with the white supremacy stuff, not being about race, but being about capitalism, a lot of it is downhill from there to understand why the woke left is doing what they're doing. So it's possible to be gay without being queer. Yes. In fact, most gay people are just gay. Most gay people don't even like being called queer. Queer is a term that is being forced onto gay people by trans activists in order to gain political power. That's it. They have hijacked a movement. And they hijacked it the moment that they reclaimed the word queer. And do you know when that happened? Does anyone want to guess when this happened? Magically, as if by divine intervention, this all happened after gay marriage was legalized. Prior to gay marriage being legalized, there was a legitimate problem with gay people being treated as second-class citizens in this country. And we all need to acknowledge that. Okay? Gay marriage was a thing that needed to happen. By the way, anytime the right says, this is all a result of legalizing gay marriage. No, it's not. It is not at all. And that makes you look really homophobic and you should cut it out. There was a time, and many of us are old enough to remember it, when gay people did not have the same rights as straight people, were treated very differently, were treated as second-class citizens. When gay marriage was legalized, a lot of the problems were solved, okay? It wasn't perfect. I'm not making the argument that it was perfect, but it was a lot better than what it was. Once gay marriage was legalized, the queer activists came in, hijacked the movement, started introducing queer into everything, reclaimed the word queer, labeled it as all LGBT people, even though it wasn't, and they did it to gain political power so that they could destabilize the system by making everything queer. So these things are two really different things. Yep, that's right. That was the same time that the GSAs in schools, they went from being gay-straight alliances, which is what they were in the 90s when that was invented. And the gay-straight alliances in schools were necessary. The gay-straight alliances in schools solved problems. It was a good thing. It made young gay kids feel like they had a place to go. It created acceptance around people being gay. It was a good thing. And then after gay marriage got legalized, the gay-straight alliances became gender and sexuality alliances, which was hijacking the movement by these people. It was to gain political power to destabilize the system so they could drag us all to the left. It had nothing to do with gay people. It had nothing to do with making the world a better place for gay people. It was all about gaining political power. Exactly. Let's problematize the next thing, because you can never usher in Marxism if you're not creating problems. Because people are never going to overturn capitalism. There's never going to be a will to fundamentally uproot everything that society is built on unless you're causing people a lot of pain. And the way you cause people pain is by creating problems. They can only get to Marxism if they're creating problems. Everyone tracking? All right. This is a big one, guys. I really do appreciate you hanging out with me. Please share this information. Please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which again is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And we will see you later for nothing remotely controversial. We've had our vegetables. Now let's have our dessert. I'm going to go take a little break. I'm going to get some actual work done, which I haven't even been able to check my damn email today. So I have like no idea what's going on. I'm going to go get some real work done, guys. I will see you in about 3 hours for nothing remotely controversial. Again, if you have questions later, please leave them in the comments. Get in touch on the Substack, whatever you want to do. And let's kick back and have some fun later. One last super chat from Shauna. Thank you, Shauna. They also hijacked feminism and women's studies by making it gender studies. That's a different problem for a different day, Shauna. I don't have the bandwidth to deal with that right now. Okay? But some good food for thought, and I do appreciate the super chat. All right, guys, I'll be back at 9:30 tonight with Joshua, and of course, I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. with another episode of The Cult. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye.